Well, thanks for joining us today. I'm Renee Stephens, Vice President of North America at WePredict, and I'm delighted to be here on behalf of James Davies, our founder and CEO, and the fabulous team at WePredict. And today we're unveiling our next chapter of Deepview True Cost Study and Awards. This study, which we call SOS or Second Owner Study, shows what it actually costs to keep vehicles on the road and in top condition in the first 3 years of ownership. So our awards will reveal which 2018 model year brands and models have the lowest service cost in the first 3 years of ownership across 24 segments and including electric vehicles. Until now, manufacturers have had their own service and repair data, but they didn't have insights into competitors' performance data. And if there's one thing I've learned in my 35 years in quality, shining the light in the right corners allows people to ask the right questions and collectively determine the right solutions. So today we're going to shine a lot of lights in the corners. But before we get into it, let me tell you a little bit about WePredict and why we're the ones telling this story. While we've been more behind the scenes until recently, we've been working in automotive since 2009. And as our name suggests, WePredict. We develop predictive methodologies specifically for the automotive industry, providing predictive analytics as a service. And we can tell you how your products and components perform today in the industry and how they will perform in the next 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, or longer. And now with our vast industry-wide service database, which makes available more than a decade of service records so far, including service records from non-dealers, this is data that manufacturers themselves have not had access to. So our clients include major automakers, suppliers, tech companies, and EV startups, which many of whom don't have their own data yet. But because of our unique view of product risk, in addition to quality, we have groups such as after sales, purchasing, engineering teams, and others such as insurance companies, finance teams, and safety regulators that also use our services. And by getting ahead of problems with predictive analytics, we've saved our clients and ultimately consumers millions of dollars over the last decade. And now with the addition of our industry-wide service database, we will be adding to that total. So in our first study announced back in May, we looked at the actual costs of keeping vehicles safe, operational, and on the road in the first 3 months of ownership. And so many commented, who cares about the first 3 months? The manufacturers are paying for it anyway, right? Well, what we saw was that there were vastly different costs between models, and really, who wants to have their new $40,000 or $50,000 car in the shop in the first 3 months? Certainly not me. People do care. And now that we've expanded the study to look at the first 3 years and call it Second Owner Study, we are now taking the next steps in the journey. So now people have asked us, why second owner? So for those who lease vehicles, average lease turn-in is around 3.1 years. So if I'm looking at a used model or to be the next owner of that leased car, I would want to understand what I'm buying into. But this study is not just on lease models. Customers who purchase are holding on to their vehicles, 11 years on average. So regardless of what path the customer is on, this study provides a view of the actual costs in the first 3 years. In fact, industry service records indicate that these early costs are important, and early costs are indicative of future cost risks. So it's warranty, the costs do multiply, and actually at a fairly predictable rate as vehicles age. So after the first year, these 3 months costs are 3 times higher. And by year 3 and 5, they've gone up to 15 and 20 times what they were early on. And that's right when consumers have to start opening up their own wallets. When we look at model by model, a vehicle's competitive cost position didn't improve over time. If a vehicle ranked poorly with high costs right out of the chute, on average, it didn't fare much better as it aged. So if I'm buying a used car today, I would definitely want to see what I'm getting into. So let's get into it. What I'm going to share, it's not a survey. These are not customer perceptions of what went wrong with their vehicle or what they didn't like. This is exactly what happened when they went to a dealer or other service facility to have their cars repaired and maintained. And just like I told you all about the great predictions that we provide to manufacturers, this study reflects only actual results, actual dollars spent. So our study very simply shows only the real dollars and cents that exchange hands to service and maintain vehicles in the first 3 years of ownership. So it's no survey, no guessing, just true cost. So Deepview True Cost, SOS, is a report of the actual dollars spent by both consumers and manufacturers after the vehicle is sold to keep the vehicle in top condition, safe, operational, and on the road. And again, in this report, we're focusing on actual expenses that occur in the first 3 years with a clear view of true cost and an indication of reliability. And again, as I said earlier, this is not a survey. The numbers we base this report on are just enormous. Many of you know the term voice of the customer. I refer to this as voice of the vehicle at volume. And just look at the numbers we analyzed for this report from 2016 to 2018 model year. 65 million repair orders, 13 million vehicles, 17 billion in expenditures, 9.5 billion in labor, 7.7 billion in parts costs are analyzed for this report. And I know when I was at JD Power, we just delighted to get 50 models to report. So the scale here is just massive. And what costs do we count? So we receive all varieties of costs that occur at service facilities. But for this result, I'll show we include costs incurred for any unplanned repairs. So something broke or it didn't work as intended, warranty, service campaigns initiated by the manufacturer, diagnostics, maintenance, software updates, and warranty on factory installed accessories, and also recalls. And all items, these are all items that are necessary to keep the vehicle, again, in top condition, safe, operational, and on the road. And this is not your typical cost of ownership metric. And typically, when you think about cost of ownership metrics, they're estimates with a lot of assumptions. They estimate gas consumption, estimate insurance costs, depreciation. This is quite simply the actual cost that was spent. And why is this important? As I said earlier, shine the light in those corners. Transparency does drive improvement. We've seen it before in the industry. And Deepview is the first industry-wide view of actual dollars spent on parts and labor. We can tell you which vehicles have the lowest repair costs. For manufacturers, we can tell you how competitive your parts and labor costs are. And my personal favorite, which we will answer later, we can tell you which electric vehicles really have lower service costs now and what that means for the future. And that's ultimately what will affect the model's residual value and consequently brand confidence. So now for the moment you've all been waiting for, award winners and top 3 models. Then we'll answer that burning question in the industry. Do electric vehicles really have lower service costs over the long haul? And then we'll also take a deeper look at what's driving a rise in service expenditures that we're seeing in the industry. On to the awards. We're really excited to announce that Kia receives the top honors as the non-premium brand with the lowest service cost per vehicle in the first 3 years of ownership, followed by Hyundai and Dodge. The average for non-premiums was $573 per vehicle, with a range from $369 up to $1,316 per vehicle. And moving to premiums, Acura is the best premium make with the lowest service costs, followed by Lincoln and Genesis. The premium average was more than double the non-premium average at $1,513 per vehicle, with a range starting from $600 up to a little over $5,000 per vehicle. Now, if you look in general and look at the manufacturers, Nissan Motor Company performed well in true cost with 6 segment leading models and 9 models in the top 3 of their segment. Hyundai Motor Corp had the highest percentage of models, 55% in the top 3, with the lowest service costs in the segment. And General Motors had the second highest percentage of models in the top 3, with 43% of their fleet having the lowest, being in the top 3 with the lowest service cost in their segment. And now let's look at some of that segment performance. In the small car segment, the Chevrolet Spark won the top honors, followed by Kia Rio and Ford Fiesta. Kia Forte leads in the compact car segment, followed by Hyundai Elantra and Chevrolet Bolt. Kia Sportage won the compact SUV segment, with the Buick Envision and Encore rounding up the top 3. Lincoln MKZ won in the compact premium car segment, and Acura RDX and Nissan 370Z were top ranked in compact premium SUV and compact premium sporty car, respectively. What you'll also notice is the range at the bottom of each segment. While the top ranked dollar amount may seem low in some cases, you can see there is quite a range of costs in these segments. Some ranges can reach as high as $2,400 and even $3,200 in the first 3 years. So now moving on more, Mazda MX-5 leads in compact sporty car segment, and Kia Soul led in the compact MPV segment. Moving on to the midsize models. Kia Optima leads with the lowest service cost in the midsize car segment, followed by Ford Fusion and Hyundai Sonata. In midsize SUV, Dodge Journey wins. Hyundai Santa Fe Sport and Santa Fe round out the top 3 in that segment. Nissan Frontier edges out the Chevrolet Colorado and GMC Canyon in midsize pickup. Dodge Caravan leads in midsize van. For premium midsize, Infiniti Q70 leads the midsize premium car segment. Lincoln MKX wins in midsize premium SUV. And the Chevrolet Corvette has a commanding lead in midsize premium sporty car. And last in the midsize segment, Dodge Challenger leads with the lowest service costs in the midsize sporty car segment. In the large segments, Chrysler 300 has the lowest service costs among large cars. Ram 1500 garners the award in the competitive large pickup segment. Chevrolet Silverado 2500 heavy duty leads amongst the large heavy duty pickups. Nissan Armada edged out the Chevrolet Tahoe. The Cadillac CT6 led in the large premium car. And for large premium SUVs, Infiniti QX80 takes home the trophy. And now this is a growing segment, commercial vehicles, particularly with the increase in delivery vehicles in the past year and the bevy of new electric models that are launching in this segment and coming up. Nissan NV wins with the lowest service cost, followed by Nissan NV200 and Chevrolet Express. And most exciting is the opportunity to report on electric vehicles. For this segment, because there are fewer vehicles, we calculated totals using the first 3 years from both 2017 and 2018 model year vehicles combined. And I'm pleased to announce that Honda Clarity wins top honors, followed by Chevrolet Bolt and Volkswagen e-Golf. The Honda Clarity EV had the lowest service cost in the industry total. With the full list of EV models covered in the study, the range is actually quite large, with costs as high as $2,247 per vehicle in the last 3 years. And so that leads us to quite an interesting story and the question on everyone's minds: do EVs really cost less over time? There is great expectation from consumers and some trepidation, I would say, amongst the dealers that EVs will not need as much service. They won't need to be serviced as often as gas models. There are far fewer mechanical parts to contend with. Service costs should be lower, right? So let's see. Well, let me begin the story by looking at the first 3 months, and specifically the actual service cost per vehicle spent by manufacturers and customers during those early times. So what Deepview True Cost found was that service costs on electric vehicles was 2.3 times higher on electric vehicles compared to gas and hybrid models. And gas and hybrid models had quite similar rates, even across various times in service costs. EVs averaged $123 per vehicle compared to $53 per vehicle on gas models. And breaking that down a bit further, at the bottom of the chart there, maintenance was half the cost on EVs, $2 per vehicle for EVs compared to $4 per vehicle for gas models. However, in looking at repairs and campaigns, a different story emerges. Repairs are 2 times higher on EVs, and campaigns are 4 times higher on EVs compared to gas models. Now, let's move to 12 months. And you'll see a similar trend. EVs are still experiencing higher service costs than gas models, 1.6 times higher. So $306 per vehicle for EVs at 12 months in service compared to $189 per vehicle for gas models. And again, when we split it out, now you start to see an even bigger gap on maintenance, with EV costs 77% lower than for gas vehicles. EVs went from $2 at 3 months in service up to $4, up to $7 in the first year, whereas gas models rose from $4 to $30 in the first year. Repairs and campaigns remained fairly similar. Repairs were still about 1.7 times higher on EVs, and campaigns were still 4 times higher on EVs. Now, fast forward to 36 months in service, and a different story emerges. By 36 months in service, we begin to see the service cost benefits that everyone hoped for. Service costs are 30% lower on EVs than for gas or hybrid models. EVs averaged $514 per vehicle in the first 3 years compared to $749 per vehicle for gas models. And this cost advantage is primarily driven by lower maintenance costs, where EVs are 3 times lower than their gas counterparts. Repairs also improved on average after the first years, with them being 22% lower, as did campaigns, which were now more in line with what we were seeing and very similar to gas models. So is this relationship consistent over time? The answer is yes. In True Cost, we looked at several model years comparing EVs and gas models. And so the pink lines on this chart represent the gas models across 3 different model years. And the blue lines are EVs across those same 3 model years. And the results are very consistent. Early on, up to the first year of ownership, EV service costs are generally 2 to 3 times higher. However, by the time the vehicle ages to 3 years, those service costs on gas models grow 3 times higher than electric vehicles. So as you see, over time, the service costs start to narrow. And looking at it over time, the gap in service costs does narrow and becomes positive for EVs after the first year, primarily due to the lower maintenance costs that we're seeing. So what is driving up the costs in the first year? Well, one big area is actually diagnostics. The average diagnostic hours are 2 times higher on EVs than they are on gas vehicles. These are new vehicles with all new technology, and it's very simply taking longer for technicians to determine what is wrong and to ensure that they're making the correct diagnostics. So combine that also with higher diagnostic rates. Many times the most experienced techs are the ones that are tasked with diagnosing these new vehicles. And costs can multiply. In true cost, we see labor hours 1.5 times higher and labor rates 1.3 times higher on EVs than on gas models. And I have to tell you, it was so fascinating to read thousands and thousands of tech comments and to see the journey that these professionals are on. Comments show just the incredible time and attention techs have to take to service batteries, this careful handling and removal. And many times you'll see comments, and some of them that I have highlighted here, they're waiting for HV specialists to arrive and assist. They're on the phone with engineers at manufacturers that they've probably never talked to before directly. They're submitting multiple TAC cases. Here's one mentioning 14 correspondence, multiple test drives. You see it going up to 4 test drives that they had to take on this one vehicle. And again, this is all to make sure they're finding the correct problems and making the right repairs. And so typically when we look at tech comments, because they're on really every repair record that we get, you see typically around 50 to 100 words in those comments. But on EVs, we're seeing paragraphs and some as long as 2,000 words. But this work is necessary, but it also adds the labor time and thus the cost. And what components are they servicing in that first year? Well, as you can see here, 5 of the top 10 components are EV specific. So areas like battery chargers and cables, the high voltage battery itself, battery contacts, HV wiring, battery control units, in addition to other areas of the vehicle. So interestingly, it's not just the new electric vehicles that are driving up service costs. We've seen service costs in general have been rising in the industry. Average service cost per vehicle at 3 years rose 11%, moving from $660 per vehicle on 2016 models to $731 per vehicle on 2018 models. And in looking at the allocation of those costs, repairs remain the greatest cost per vehicle at 52% of the total, followed by maintenance at 31% of the total, and campaigns made up about 17% of the total service costs. But you can see the allocation has remained fairly consistent over the past 2 years. It moved a little bit, but remained fairly constant. But what's changed the most? Campaign cost per vehicle has increased 35% on 3-year-old 2018 model vehicles. Maintenance costs were also up 11%. And repairs has moved slightly. It's up 4% in the latest true cost report. But the increase, as we look at it, it's evenly split between parts and labor, with part cost per vehicle 11% higher and labor at 10% higher on average in total across the industry. And now by year 3, vehicles will start to fall out of warranty coverage, so consumers begin to pick up more of the expenses. So for 2018 3-year-old vehicles in the report, 46% or $309 of the service cost was paid by consumers, and 54% or $364 was paid by the manufacturer. But who is picking up the majority of the service cost increase that we're seeing, or the chain? Right now, the manufacturer at this point. Customers paid only $1 more per vehicle on the 2018s. However, manufacturer paid service cost rose 11% in that same time frame. More specifically, if we look at those manufacturer paid service costs, labor costs for manufacturer paid service rose 18%, impacted by an increasing level of vehicle complexity and wage competition for trying to attract and retain techs. Also, greatest service cost increases we're seeing on maintenance and campaign events. And the increase that we saw was more pronounced on premium vehicles, where 2018 models recorded an 18% cost hike up to $1,513 per vehicle, while non-premiums averaged a 4% increase during that same time frame. So areas like new technologies tend to enter the market in the premium vehicles, which also makes them a little bit more costly to repair. So today we shared with you kind of the next chapter on how vehicles are performing in the market in the first 3 years and what it takes to keep them in top condition and on the road. So for customers that are holding onto their vehicles longer, or for the customers that are looking for their next used vehicle in the first 3 years of experience, will give an indication of what those costs may be required ahead. And for the EV buyers, or those on the fence on whether the service cost benefits will materialize, we now have actual results to show that in fact they do. You just have to get beyond that first year. And as I alluded to in the beginning, the story continues. We predict continues to amass this industry-wide data and apply our predictive analytics. So using our data and analytics, we're helping manufacturers understand and get ahead of these trends. And in many cases, we're able to help companies see problems coming months and sometimes years earlier than they've historically been able to, and to intervene to avoid racking up millions in repairs and enable them to apply those savings elsewhere to other cool programs that they're developing. So with that, I want to thank you for your attention today. Please feel free to reach out if you have any questions, or visit our website at wepredict.com. And stay tuned. We look forward to continuing to share the remarkable journey that the automotive industry is embarking on. Thank you.